All right. Good good afternoon, everybody. Still maybe give it a couple of minutes before we turn it over to Bronwyn and Andrea. Yeah, or yeah, maybe a couple of minutes and then feel free to just start whenever you're comfortable.
Great.
Thank you. Maybe we'll give another 2 minutes for everyone to grab a coffee between sessions and join us. That sounds good. Perfect.
Hi, this
All right, so it looks like a few more have joined in, so we'll get started. So welcome to Finding the Right Balance in Attracting Industry Partners. I'm just going to start off by doing a quick introduction of myself. My name is Bronwyn McDowell. I'm the Research Project Specialist at Sheridan College's CERT Center. I've actually been with the college and with CERT for 9 years now, and I have a background in project management along with film studies. So I'll turn it over to my co-presenter, Andrea, just to give a quick update on who she is.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Johnson. I am the General Manager for the Center for Emerging Research Initiatives at Mohawk College. I was most recently our Manager of Industry and Community Engagement for a role that included our tax. I've been at the college for about 6 years, and I have a background in communications and knowledge translation.
All right, so Sheridan College's CERT Center was established in 2010. We were previously supported by an NSERC IE and MRI-RE grants. And we specialize in screen-based research, which one of our most current focuses being virtual production. And we also do provide training to industry, as our name suggests as well.
Great, and Mohawk College has 2 TACs. We have MEDIC, which was established as a TAC in 2016 and recently renewed. That was previously supported and established with an NSERC IE, and that research area specializes in digital health and interoperability on the software side. We also have EPIC, which is our Energy and Power Innovation Center. That previously, prior to becoming a TAC, which it just did in 2020, it hosted an industrial research chair as well as an NSERC IE. And that research area focuses on energy efficiency and protection and control. So quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. We've sort of structured it. Ken had a very big ask of us of what he would like us to cover. And we did narrow it down because we wanted to have time for questions and discussion at the end of this. But we're going to chat a bit more about the buyer journeys framework, the importance of developing trust, your most successful marketing tool, and finding the right balance of revenue streams. And then we're going to take questions from the audience at the end. We will certainly share as much as we can about the best practices from 3 TACs that are very different stages, from 1 year old all the way to 10 years old. So the first thing I'm going to get started on is just talking a bit about the buyer's journey. Some of you may have seen this, some of you it may be new to you, but I wanted to introduce it to you because it's a simplified framework that can help you understand the customer decision-making process and in turn help you think about how you're attracting the right client mix and making sure that you have those qualified leads, that you have the right sort of mixture of projects. This buyer's journey will sort of help you think about things in terms of finding the right information to potential partners and providing them at the time that they need. So it moves from left to right, starting with awareness, which is typically getting them to know about you, getting sort of them aware of their project problem, moving into consideration, which is getting a lead, then decision, which is focused on actually securing that project, selling the project, followed by retention, getting the comeback over and over again, and then advocacy, turning them into an advocate for what you do as a TAC. I've found at Mohawk that this framework has been very useful for us because it encourages us to put it in our partner's shoes. We're thinking about things from our industry partners' perspective. It also has helped us prioritize our business development activities and helped us design marketing and communication activities that are scalable with very little resources, making sure that there's consistency. Part of that work of attracting the right partner is certainly reaching them where they are, knowing their place in the journey and giving them the information that they need to move through that process. For today's presentation, the two of us will mostly be focusing on tips and tricks related to the awareness and consideration stage. Those are sort of easy implementable suggestions and a new way or a way to reinforce how you're doing, already thinking about things that you're doing. So one thing I just wanted to highlight, a lot of us are very familiar with the sales funnel. And there's so many of these different images and different graphics that are all over the place and all of them bring value. So certainly find what is useful for you and to your framework. But the important thing about thinking about the difference between the sales funnel and the buyer's journey is that the buyer's journey, which in this case is on the right, and represents the complexity of the decision-making that happens out there and how it's not just add to cart and then suddenly they're an applied research project. It's a lot more complicated, a lot more back and forth. But in recognizing that centers what you're doing on your client, on your partner. The sales funnel is really about how you're moving people through internally. It's a you thing versus a them thing. So that's why I sort of encourage you to shift the way you think about it. The buyer's journey also sort of removes that idea that you're a gatekeeper to a wide range of information. The fact is that there's lots of different ways that you're marketing, that you're telling your story to attract the right mix of partners. And a lot of it has to do with who you are as a representative, as a subject matter expert, but it's also removing any sort of requirement for your partner to only talk to you, get the information they need, because we know that's not how the modern decision-making process works right now. We know that the pipeline of partners is not linear as much as we would like to think that every action we do will move a partner forward into our lead file, into an actual project. We know that's not true, but thinking about the customer journey approach helps you make sure that you're responding to their pain points. Over to you to talk about trust.
Perfect. So building trust among the industry is very important. And to do this, it takes time. For us, it took a lot of time. At first, we found this to be a big challenge. Industry didn't trust us, they didn't understand us, and they didn't realize what we could do for them. It's necessary to have very thick skin and persistence when delivering your message. And if your message isn't working the way that you hope it would, you need to morph it so that you can find the right language your industry can respond to. We continued to deliver this consistent message to industry until we, CERT, felt that the industry understood us. Even to this day, we've had a few examples of companies who began to work with us and viewed us more as a consulting house versus a research facility, and their expectations were just far too great. So we continue to learn from these experiences and move forward to refine industry's image of who we are. It's important to ensure that we have advocates in the industry and in the government that understand our message and can support us in sharing this to the community. To build trust among our industry, we have on occasion provided above and beyond support to our partners in times of need, be this through helping with an extreme deadline they might have, or providing equipment in a pinch. But we're careful to make sure that they understand that this is an exception and not the rule, because it does go a long way in building that trust relationship. I will also mention that this is critical to protect IP and NDA agreements when building that relationship. Being overcautious in this regard goes a long way for the partners. If we see negativity against our image in the industry, we try to correct it as quickly as possible. And we do our best to use our partners and advocates to help us with that. For example, we've worked very closely with the City of Toronto to build a relationship so that they now have the tools to advocate for us to our industry. As a result of this effort, we're now at a partnership level with everyone, and we've kind of been brought to the table and are viewed as trusted advisors and industry experts in our field. Industry now turns to us because they recognize our opinion matters and that we do have the ability to help them.
Perfect. And building upon that comment around trust, that Bronwyn's comments really highlight the fact that trust is an incredibly strong factor in attracting potential partners and in making sure that they are going through that journey with you, that they're considering your expertise as a solution to their project. And a lot of that leads to what builds trust, such as consistency. But what's really interesting to that is that part of the trust that was just mentioned is the idea that word of mouth is the strongest marketing tool. And what I've learned when I've followed the data after working with our research areas for 6 years now is that our weakest marketing tool is ads. The ads don't build the trust. And it would be great if we could just run an ad and be one and done. But the relationships build the trust, the being seen as trusted as advisors, as experts, and having someone in the industry, someone who's already helping a partner refer them to your TAC, that's incredibly powerful. And one of the things we noted here at Mohawk is that a lot of our word of mouth started coming through the demos, the tours, everything that was held on site. And so we did have to pivot a lot due to COVID to that digital first model, like all of us did. But once we realized that everything is about reinforcing the trust and reinforcing and using word of mouth as our primary tool and flowing through that, everything became a lot clearer. We knew that it raised the awareness that we needed. So that way we designed events, activities, marketing, communication activities to all reinforce that word of mouth, knowing that word of mouth and trust is always that first point of contact. It's not that Google ad necessarily. It's not the ad in the trade publication. It's that personal referral. It's catching their attention. And in turn, once we realized those things going hand in hand, we were able to craft more deeper and meaningful communication exercises and activities. And we truly got to know the language that our partners, our supporters were speaking. So there's a few things we want to share just about how we reinforced word of mouth. Bronwyn, do you want to start with your examples over at Sheridan?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things that we did sort of early on, and we've been fortunate to not need to use it as much, is we sort of started to do grant discovery events. And what these was we brought a panel of experts together from different funding agencies to speak to our industry about the opportunities that were available to them. So for example, one of the panels we put together was a representative from NSERC, OCI, and IRAP. And they were there to sort of answer any questions that the industry might have about what funding is available that they can leverage to work with CERT. We also kind of maintain our social media channels, although that doesn't necessarily show a lot of business coming through. The consistency there and the visuals really help to kind of create that word of mouth and reinforcement. As I mentioned previously, we've also sort of built relationships with our advocates. So the City of Toronto as a great example. We've worked closely with them to become, a great partner and really understand what we can do for industry. And then they're able to go out and create that word of mouth and share that information with the industry in their efforts as well. And lastly, the simpler referral from previous partners to new partners or other people in the industry. So that's always, been helpful in having a very successful project and that partner then going to speak to somebody else they're working with in the industry, and that second partner then coming to us for support as well.
Great, thank you. And at Mohawk, obviously there's some overlap. I think we all know the power of our advocates. We did a lot of work on the communication and the event side in terms of giving them specific tools that they could use. So our industry events and conferences were focused very much on the education. It was a really lightning bolt moment when we sat back and realized that our audience is essentially nerds. They are people that are passionate about a specific subject area. They love technology, they love innovation. So that helped clarify us that they weren't as interested in human interest or soft stories. In media relations speak, we call it people, puppies, and parking. They were interested in case studies and white papers and industry events that were heavily focused on the technology and learning. So we do that by building our credibility, enhancing our credibility by working with recognized experts in the field. So in digital health, for example, we work with the leading digital health companies and organizations in Canada, such as Canada Health Infoway, to co-plan the event. We do the legwork, but they provide that credibility and access to speaker, and we sort of bask in the reflective joy of their expertise. As I said, we spent a lot of time on content marketing, educational pieces, media, white papers, case studies, project summaries, social media posts, as much as possible that were useful. And that went tied in with our media pitches. And the idea behind that is that we would bring them in on word of mouth. We might talk to them before they even see a piece of content, before they see a social media article, before they go to our website. But every content, every touch point after then, whether we were manipulating it actively or whether they were just Googling it, would reinforce that they were going to make that right decision. They already had a warm, fuzzy feeling from that partner referral from the industry advocates. So everything we did after that was to reinforce our credibility. And of course, that helped too, because we're trying to create scalable content. So every piece that we worked on to attract these partners, we would repurpose over and over again. Bronwyn had a comment about consistency being key. We do that with our written platform. Everything is consistent, it's familiar. It's okay if people see the same story a few different times. We don't do one and done. You might drive by the same billboard every day on your way to work or on the day at the grocery store. Doesn't mean the message is necessarily diluted. Just means maybe one day you need that coffee that McDonald's is advertising, the next day you don't, but the message is still there. And going back and linking into that buyer's journey I mentioned, what was really helpful for us at Mohawk is to map what we're doing to the buyer's journey. So before we create something, before we embark on an activity, we look at it critically and say, how is this going to attract an industry partner? How will this help us in the consideration phase? And in most cases, it will really, really actually help across multiple phases. And that's where we sort of say that don't do one and done. You all have limited resources. So make sure that what you're doing can be just reused at multiple levels of the customer journey. So that sort of gives you an idea of different tools and opportunities, especially on the awareness and consideration side. I will hand it back for our last slide.
Perfect. So also in kind of this consideration of bringing a variety of partners on board, we at CERT looked at kind of our revenue balances as well. When we first started out, we were solely focused on grants, and that certainly worked for us at the beginning. But we quickly realized that if we wanted to be sustainable, we needed to make some changes here. We weren't able to recoup the cost of writing a grant, and the lead time to writing a grant is just far too long sometimes. We're also unique at Sheridan, so our overhead actually stays with Sheridan and it doesn't come to CERT. And the way of the college working, they didn't really understand our concept of fee for research or fee for services in a non-competitive way. So about 7 years ago or so, David Dexter, who's CERT's director, was brought on to take a look at this and move CERT from a grant model to kind of what we call a sustainable not-for-profit style model. We took a look at our cost structures and spent time to understand the hard and soft costs of our operations. And it became very clear that we could not be sustainable in a typical college model of just grants. We couldn't survive in our role and mandate of supporting industry just in this way. And as we all know, we have KPIs that we need to meet, and there's no way we could hit those targets if we didn't have a good mix of these different types of revenues. We also work in an industry that pivots quite a lot. There's always new technologies and emerging changes. So we needed to be able to make our own decisions to better industry versus being guided by the school structure. You know, grants are fantastic. They pay for researchers, but there's no funding for marketing. There's very limited funding for project management, and there's certainly no funding for non-grant work. Examples being professional development or internal research to stay relevant and ahead of that curve that I spoke about. You know, grant programs are also changing frequently. So for example, we used to use a lot of the OCI VIP grants, but with this new structure that they've put in place, we don't use them nearly as much as we used to. These constant changes certainly make it difficult to plan for the future as well. So sticking with the grant model meant that we had very limited potential for growth, and we would not be the ideal resource for the industry that we now are today. CERT doesn't use faculty. We have permanent research staff on our payroll, and it's the only way that we're able to be dynamic and work at industry speed. We need to mimic the way that the industry works so that we can be successful in attracting those industry partners. Having this model of revenue streams also allows for a wider variety of partners to be eligible to leverage our services. So the results of this is now we have multi-year fee for research contracts with several partners, and we've just closed our first multi-year strategic partnership with a very large partner. So we've got a bucket of money that we can use at our discretion to innovate and stay relevant. Our target here is to have about a year plus runway of secured funding to cover our staff burn rate, both research and operations. We're still actively educating Sheridan and Sheridan Research about how this model works for us. Those three pillars being grant for research, fee for research, and fee for service. Perfect. So that sort of concludes the formal presentation portion today. So we can open it up to questions if there's any from the audience.
I think you can certainly, you're welcome to unmute yourself. We're a small enough group. I don't think you need to worry about the hands up. I will say that at Mohawk as well, we are trying to reduce that dependency on grants. And, you know, we're on the earlier side of the TAC model. So there's certainly times when we might overuse them. We have a few FedDev funding opportunities that are very useful. The interactive visits are obviously very useful as well. But the goal is to be that sustainable, as much as possible, sustainable fee for service that will cover our costs and provide value to industry in the unique way that the TAC can.
Hi. Bronwyn, did I hear that you put aside the equivalent of a year's salary?
That is our target, yes. So I think right now we're about 8 months worth of burn rate for our staff. But our target is to move forward to have about a year's salary. And yeah.
How big a team do you have?
We have, that's a good question. I need to read. I think we have about 15 on staff right now.
Okay. I wish we could do that, but with 35 people on the team, it's just.
That's quite a big team to be able to do it for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of work to kind of, you know, plan out and forecast that, but we're.
Plus, you know, we kind of use this this money aside for investment.
Right.
Not to cover salary. I mean, it's, you know, for investments that we cannot find money for in programs.
Right. And I guess as we have it, we have, you know, our salary set aside for a year, but we also do have new projects coming through the door, new grants that sort of defer that as well. So it is sort of a rainy day fund, I suppose, for when we have a gap in those new projects coming through that we use it for. But we just want to be able to have a year's worth just to make sure that we're covered. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Bronwyn, how hard was it to get Sheridan to agree to that, letting the tax sort of run as a quasi not-for-profit?
We're still working on it. It's a constant education, evolving, lesson. So when Sheridan and CERT first started out, all of our budgets and bank accounts would be cleared at the end of the fiscal year. So there was a lot of conversations between executives and David to kind of explain to them that our revenues needed to roll over to the next fiscal year. And that was, quite a big discussion point for quite a while. But we've not going to move past that. So it's still an evolving relationship and education of Sheridan and Sheridan Research to understand, the benefits of us kind of operating at an arm's length, if you will. I mean, we definitely still rely on Sheridan Research to submit our grants, to support with HR, payroll, that sort of thing. So we're not completely separate, but we do our best to kind of act as an arm's length where we can. So work in progress still.
And then Andrea, has Mohawk ever explored maybe kicking the tires of spinning off as not-for-profits, or?
Ooh, it's funny because we're exploring that yesterday. I was filing because we were just talking that through. We have, like many tax, both as when you're a tax and when you aren't, and we have those cycles of boom and bust. And we during a boom time, we had as many as 50 people employed, and then that project wraps up. It was a 3-year project. It was successfully completed, but then you contract significantly. So we are sort of looking at that, because it is, going back to the question, attracting the right partners goes back to having the right talent in place. And there are challenges to hiring students, to making sure that you're rolling over at the right level, that with funds that don't roll over, it's hard to demonstrate that we have enough money in the bank to hire new people. It's like, well, we can't get these new projects because we don't have the people to do them, but we can't get the people to do them because we can't hire. And so you're in this endless rabbit hole loop rather, that we're all trying to get out of. I don't know what the pros and cons are. I think I'm not sure about the structure. I wonder if in Quebec, if you do anything like that, but it does, being in control does help attracting the right partners. Being tied strongly to the college brand also very much helps.
Good point. Yeah.
Because I guess we sort of lived that reality at Tech Access Canada, where we used to be just a project of George Brown College, and then spun out to become a not-for-profit corporation. And yeah, there's definitely pros and cons, and I now appreciate the nuances a lot more. You gain that autonomy, but you lose the safety net of the college, and you're on the hook for payroll every 2 weeks and everything like that. And it's complicated, and I'm not entirely surprised nobody outside of Quebec has elected to try that model yet. I know a lot of the members are thinking about it. But yeah, nobody's gone down that road just yet. Guess maybe a loaded question. Unless anybody else has any questions, feel free to come on camera, ask them. Are there client profiles that you're not interested in engaging with?
the startup community, it's too hard. I mean, they would love to, but we try to push them towards capstone projects, some of the experiential learning projects. You know, we'll give advice, that we'll have that conversation and give some advice. But it's too tricky from a grant perspective, and it's incredibly tricky because they are often strapped for time, and a successful project is a two-way street. So that's sort of an area that we don't do a lot of work with. We try to support them in different ways within the college.
Yeah, we're very similar in that sort of the startup model is a little challenging to work with. And we've also found it challenging, even if the company might be a little bit more mature, if they don't have a technologist or a CTO on their staff, we have a lot of difficulty kind of working with them, just because there's not that ability for two-way communication, as you're saying, Andrea. And when we hand over sort of the work that we've done, there's nobody that can take it on that end and truly understand what we've done for them. So we take a look at, you know, who is on staff before we consider a project.
That's very important, because sometimes I get asked by, you know, people a little bit outside the game, what is the nature of companies the tax work with, and they're looking for a specific terminology. I didn't realize it, but pre-incubator, post-incubator, pre-accelerator, post-accelerator, and I hadn't seen it laid out like that before, but I'm assuming it'd be either in an accelerator or post-accelerator, as opposed to the folks in the incubators.
I would say so. The accelerators often might have some venture capital. They might have a more robust team. Again, back of the napkin stuff is really, really fun, and it's easy to get excited about that. But if they don't have their business plan in order, that's sort of red flag. And certainly I think all of us get the individual who perhaps is retired, who thinks that working with the college is a free, cheap, easy solution. And we do have to crush some dreams there. There's a very real business objective. We are given this money by the government to invest in infrastructure and to put it to the best use in a way that obviously doesn't compete with industry, but that also will nobly contribute to the Canadian economy. So you do have to have those difficult conversations of, we can't help you.
Hi there. I'm Michelle Bamji Mirza from La Cité Collégiale in Ottawa. So we have a tech here, about 7 full-time employees. So as a researcher, one of my responsibilities is kind of, in a shared effort to attract people in the health biotechnology space. We have other avenues of research in in plant biotechnology, as well as microbiology. That kind of my job is to kind of head up the health and get more clients in that space. And so, being a small tech, we have, I also manage projects. So I was trying to get some feedback or some, advice on best ways of attracting clients, because we have, infrastructure. I mean, we have like $7 million worth of equipment in our labs. It's just trying to find, and we do have obviously clients, but it's just to look ahead and attract those clients. So do you have some advice? I know you mentioned, word of mouth, but is there, the LinkedIn avenue, that sort of thing? Yeah.
I want me to start on that one?
Sure. Yeah.
So my background is in communications and marketing. So I put that to use a lot.
Mhm.
I wish it takes a substantial amount of time to do that outreach, because a lot of people just don't get what applied research is. They don't get what the TAC model is, but they know you can solve a problem. So I would encourage you to focus on, obviously LinkedIn. We've never done LinkedIn advertising, but we grew organically by posting once a day on LinkedIn and really focus on one platform. Twitter has a lot of noise. If you have chatty research team members, throw them on Twitter, but focusing on LinkedIn is where people hang out. We got a lot of mileage from hosting events, but also presenting at events. our white paper, which was a dream I had. I said 6 years ago when I started, we need white papers, and someone finally listened to me. Actually, I just went and did it during a pandemic and no one noticed. Tremendously useful. A white paper combined with an e-blast through an industry publication will get you downloads and will get you a piece of content that can be continuously reproduced. And then my final thought is there's nothing old. So a lot of us are working with very small marketing and communications budgets. It's very, very, it's very hard to find the time. You know, we do project summaries, one-pagers, because from a risk management perspective, having the documented success of a project is very important for all partners and to prevent IP from leaking. But spoiler alert, I know there's some TACs that are really, really good at finishing a project and publicizing it. We are not, and the value of the project is often more valuable, even if you're writing it up 2 years later. Like that's the thing. So don't be afraid to revisit things that you've promoted on different levels and beef that up and still use that as a selling tool. Because we forget we are all folks with a very innovative mindset. We live on the cutting edge. We're writing these grants, we're writing these proposals, really, really smart organizations. But your average person that has the problem, your organization that has the problem, isn't at the same level as you. So it's not expired, it's not yesterday's news, or it's still very current. And we've been working in the digital health space since I think 2009. And we were like, healthcare needs to move from fax to electronic tools, and it's still not there. So, you know, go back to what you've already done, beef it up. Don't beat yourself up if you don't finish a project and the next day have a perfectly produced communication piece.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's a couple of great comments as well. Bronwyn, did you want to add anything?
You know what? I think you covered a lot of what I was going to mention too. For us, events were very significant. So having, you know, mass invites out to the industry, having them come into our space, speaking to them about the opportunities. And, you know, from those events, we had several hundred attendees, but, you know, maybe it garnered 10 projects, but then from there it built. And then the word of mouth kind of started rolling. So that was definitely, you know, very valuable for us. And then again, just having those advocates. So, you know, the City of Toronto for us, but if there's any sort of associations or industries, you know, industry experts in your field that you could kind of build a relationship to help share your message, I think that could be very valuable as well.
And a couple of, Richard has a great advice about hosting his advanced manufacturing roundtable and participating in a number of other monthly community meetings, chamber events, tapping into other industry orientation events. There is a 24-hour content cycle. Start calling people, telling them you want to be on their podcast, contributing a guest blog post. It won't feel like there's a direct correlation. Like again, you aren't going to post a blog post and that someone might not necessarily say, I saw your blog post, but you might talk to someone and that might reinforce it. They might share it. I'm just going to quickly answer Ben's question, and then Bronwyn, I think the next question from Ray is a good one, a good comment for you to share. Have I set up a page for your TAC on LinkedIn, or are we just utilizing your personal accounts? We have our entire research department as one LinkedIn page. In a perfect world, I would advocate setting up individual pages, and a lot of people do this, because then you are relaying content that's useful to just one audience segment. We don't have the resources to do that. So I just tag things accordingly. And I call my team and let them know if there's something relevant, and then they can share, and that builds up the number of impressions. All right, Ray's comment. Do you want to share that one?
Yeah,
you
so
see it?
In summary, one thought with respect to the corporate model. There we go. All right, Ray, did you want to speak to your comment there? Sorry, I just saw you come on.
Sure, I can do that.
Great.
So I was going to say that when I was at Red River, we like Ken mentioned, like many others, we thought about doing a corporate model. But my comment in this regard was, if you do the corporate model, how does that affect your clients with respect to SHRED eligibility, right? Because I found, like, I spent several years on the CRA's SHRED partnership and advisory committees, and I was also worked with PwC on helping their clients with SHRED claims. And in my experience, if you had if the eligibility of a project for SHRED treatment was being questioned, that question pretty much went away if they worked with an academic partner, especially if the academic partner had gone through a peer review funding application process, because that was a good indicator that it was SHRED eligible to CRA. Also, if you had IRAP involved, that was also a good indicator that the project really passed the test for SHRED, which is scientific research and experimental development. So that was my comment, more along the line is, if you pursue the corporate model, will that affect SHRED eligibility? And and in Quebec, they CCTTs were, it'd be interesting to see what their experience has been on with the not-for-profit model and SHRED eligibility for their clients.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and it's a good question. I'm not sure the answer to, because you're right. In the example of the partners that we've worked with, to be SHRED eligible, we've always gone the grant route with them, and I think that's kind of where having that balance of grants, fee for research, and fee for service is important, right? To be able to give those different opportunities to the partner depending on their needs.
Yeah, and right now the only NSERC program, assuming it still exists, which is explicitly SHRED eligible, is the Industrial Research Chairs program with it. And I know that because I helped write the interpretation for CRA along with Bernard Rivera, who was Vice Provost Research at McGill at the time, and Mel Machado, who was with the SHRED program. I'm going to have to sign off shortly because I'm speaking at the next session. So.
Great, thanks, Ray.
Ray raises a very valid point. So just before jump in any more questions, the next two sessions, we're right now in breakout room either 1 or 2, depending on which session you're in, and then the next ones that starting at 2:30 are in 3 and 4. So we'll have to jump out to jump back in, just FYI.
So Ken, just a logistic question. I think we're in breakout room 2 now. So and my presentation is breakout room 2. So do I have to do the same, or?
I think yours is in breakout room 3.
Okay, all right. I'll just leave and come back. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's a different Zoom link.
Okay, thanks.
And I think the Industrial Research Chairs program's dead. That got killed as part of that amalgamation at NSERC.
That's what I kind of thought, but there was the precedent was there. And I know whenever I talked with Bert about it, or with Christine Metzabrowska, who was his predecessor, and she had also worked with the SHRED program back in the day. They always say it was sort of implicitly eligible, but I would be much more comfortable if it was explicitly eligible. It gives certainty to the clients, and it also reduces the administrative burden. So,
and we've had some preliminary discussions with CRA and SHRED about that, and their only hesitation is the nature of the projects we do are so vast that the stuff along TRL like 7, 8 is where it starts to get outside of SHRED purview. So they're reluctant to rubber stamp anything. It's different than the universities where most of it's TRL 1 to 3, right?
Yep. Good point. Okay, see you in a bit.
Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Well, this was fantastic. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Bronwyn. Awesome discussion. I really think we're just like, just the tip of the iceberg on this one. There's so many different ways to go on it. And I know I gave you a Herculean task. So thank you so much for the prep and the content. It was fantastic. I think there's a lot of ways we can go from here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And if anyone would like a copy of the presentation, I think there'll be a video available, but I'll throw in my email over here in the chat function. Thank you.
Perfect.
I guess I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but if there's any tool that Tech Access can create that would have utility to you for screening clients, scoping clients, what they should know before they even reach for you specifically, please let us know. We'll build that. And I mean, like in the next couple of months, build that. So anything we can do for the collective to make your individual lives easier and filter out the dreamers and tire kickers, we're happy to do so. Make us the bad guys. All right. Guess we'll see everybody over in rooms 3 or 4.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Bronwyn.
Bye.
On va aller à l'autre section. Ouais. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.